It's kind of a special day today. I'm going to tell you that the sermon we've got a little bit later is significantly shorter because we've got some other really awesome things happening. And first of all, we have a young woman who's part of this congregation and has been really from the beginning, although for some of that time it's been from a distance. And she's going to come and share part of her story. And what she's going to share with us takes a lot of courage for anyone. The fact that she's 16 years old and doing this, to me, is all the more miraculous. So would you all join me in welcoming Katy Bird?
Thank you, Eric. Good morning. I'm extremely grateful to be here in front of every one of you this morning, as scary as it is. So my name is Katy. For those of you that don't know me, I am 16 and I am a junior in high school. I was born into this church. I'm baptized in this church. My parents go to this church. My brothers and sisters go to this church. My grandfather was a minister at this church. My grandmother was the wedding coordinator at St. Luke's. So St. Luke's is a really big part of my family, always has been, and hopefully it always will be. I was always a really happy and joyful child. Even when I was struggling, I did my best to be happy and joyful and funny. And I would say around 8th grade year, I started to struggle a little bit. I was still coming to church, but I was slowly losing a lot of the self-confidence that I had had when I was younger. And over time, I continued to just lose that self-confidence. When I was in 8th grade, I started smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol. It wasn't incredibly bad at that point of time. It was mainly just because I wanted to fit in with my peers. I didn't feel very accepted in middle school. So I was hanging out with girls that were in high school and boys that were in high school. And in a way, I felt like that was where I belonged. And high schoolers party on the weekends, so I was partying on the weekends. It got cut off pretty quick, and I went for a while without using or drinking, but I couldn't stop it, forever. And as soon as my freshman year of high school started, I was back to where I was, drinking and smoking on the weekends because I wanted to fit in with my friends. I wanted to have something to do. I wanted something where I could fill that void that I felt that I didn't want to let God fill. And over my freshman year, it was progressing. I started smoking more than on the weekends, and by January throughout May, I was using cocaine and Molly, ecstasy. I was using Xanax almost daily and drinking a lot and basically just taking any drug that was offered to me because it didn't really matter as long as it changed the way I felt. I didn't want to feel this anxiety that I felt inside me, and I wanted to, have friends, even though the friends that I thought I had were not very true friends, because what was I worth to them without the drugs and the alcohol and the other acting out behaviors that I was participating in? I was lying. I was manipulating my parents. I was hurting the relationships that I had at church. I wasn't accepting of the love that the church was giving to me. And in January of 2015, we had a church retreat called D Now. I was pretty active in my church and in the youth program, and I could not bear the idea of going a weekend without using or drinking, so I brought alcohol into the church. I brought it into the parsonage where the Reverend lives, and I got drunk. I got my friends drunk, and we all got sent home. And I wasn't incredibly remorseful of it. I was in denial that it was a problem. I wouldn't ever admit that I felt shameful, even though deep down I felt as though I couldn't go to this church because I was a burden. I felt like I was causing too much trouble. I felt like I just wasn't worth being loved. And my parents did everything they could to put a stop to all this behavior. You know, they tried not giving me any money so that I couldn't buy any drugs. And as a result of that, I went to even more extreme measures in order to get drugs. I was exchanging my body with men in order to get drugs. At that point, it was when I was just all powerless over any of my decisions. I would pray every now and then for God to help me, but I physically could not. Only God had the power to help me. And in May of 2015, my parents woke me up in the middle of the night, and they told me that I was going to be getting on a plane and going to Utah. And later that day, I was in the middle of the West Desert of Utah in a wilderness program. I was there for 4 months, and then I went to residential for 7 months. Throughout all that time, those 11 months, I went through different stages of being in denial, being upset, being angry, being shameful. I didn't feel like I was deserving of God's love. And one night in the wilderness, I got down on my knees and I prayed. I prayed out loud. I was crying. It was emotional. And over time, praying became less about, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do in order to be a Christian. It became more about, this is what I need to do in order to survive. And after those 11 months, I went home, and I'm coming up on 18 months sober, and and even though I still struggle all the time, I still make mistakes, I am not the person who I was before. God saved me, and it wasn't the AA meetings or the rehab that changed my life. While that was very important, anybody can do that, but not everybody can turn their life over the care of God every day. And sometimes I'm not so great at that. I want to be in control of my life, and I struggle with giving my life over the care of God. But one thing that has really helped me with that is the story Houston. When I was in treatment, I got letters from my parents, and they would say, oh, Pastor Eric was asking about you, Pastor Gio is praying for you, everybody is praying for you, all of your youth ministers are praying for you. And I started to realize that I was forgiven, and that I was accepted at this church, that I was loved at this church, that I had a church to come home to and to be a part of. And I'm incredibly grateful for that, and I could not be where I am today without the story Houston, without the love that I have received from every one of you. And I'm going to continue to work hard to be the best person that I can be. I sometimes feel like I'm not doing as well as I would like myself to be. I feel like I'm not being the young Christian woman that I want to be. I sometimes laugh at jokes that I should not laugh at, and I make mistakes, and I have to ask God to help me to get through that. And when I was coming home, I received a Bible. It was a gift from my parents, but it had the signatures of almost every staff member at this church, and I had messages from Eric, messages from Giovanna, and from my youth ministers, and from my parents, and I keep that Bible with me today. And I'm going to continue to show up at the Story Houston for as long as I can, and I'm going to be a young Christian woman that I want to be, and I could not have done it without y'all. So I just wanted to share my story and hopefully give you all the hope that even when you are struggling, when you feel like you can't turn your life around, it is possible with God's love. Thank you.